Hey guys, what's going on? So I wanted to do a really fast short file, and there's probably going to be a lot of babbling because this stuff is still fresh on my mind, but I want to do this now. It is currently 9:20 p.m. on Monday, June 1st. Greensboro, North Carolina, has effectively been in under a curfew for an hour and 18 minutes. Wow. I never thought in my wildest dreams I would ever say that Greensboro, North Carolina is in a curfew. Not for what we've seen over the past few days, but it is. So, there's a first for everything, right? So what I want to talk about tonight, so a lot has happened this evening. After a few days of a lot of people begging our president to go and make a statement about the riots and about the murder and all that, he finally did. And although I would love to break down his speech rhetorically, what I want to do instead, so that I don't get into the politics of all this, is talk about the rhetoric from CNN on Trump. Now, I want to make sure that I make a couple of things clear. First of all, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump, okay? And to be honest with you, I'm not really a really big fan of CNN, okay? Now, back in the day when CNN was actually a good news network, yeah. But now it's, especially here in the past 10 years or so, they've become kind of like the joke because they kind of got behind the ball. And I could go on, and maybe I'll do a short file on cable news networks and what all has happened since basically the birth of Fox News, because once Fox News came along, everything changed. And you'll eventually hear me talk about the Fox effect and what has happened since Fox News came to be with cable news. Because cable news is just kind of like took a dive for the worst. But what I wanted to talk about specifically is AC360 and Anderson Cooper. Now, I want to predicate this too with letting you know I'm not a big fan of CNN, but I'm actually cool with Anderson. Okay, Anderson Cooper is I'm a native North Carolinian, so with the Biltmore and all that, I'm kind of Vanderbilts, but don't think that I go around with a foam finger going Vanderbilt's #1. This is not. But I'm kind of cool with Anderson. I like him. But tonight's AC360, as my wife and I decided to actually watch AC3. Well, let me rephrase that. I decided to watch AC360, and my wife just kind of sat there. Because we're trying to figure out what is going on. So we watched tail end of Aaron Burnett, and then Cooper came on. And as I was watching Anderson's hour, and then I watched I'd seen the tail end of Aaron Burnett, so I didn't really get the narrative that she had set up in her show, because all I saw was the very end of her interviewing Bernard Shaw, and then it went into AC360, so I got to see Anderson set up his narrative for his hour and then proceed with delivering that narrative. And then I caught maybe the first 10 minutes of Chris Cuomo, and I got to see Cuomo set up his narrative, although his narrative was kind of piggybacked on Anderson, as you probably, if you watch these cable news networks, they're so predictable, because the 7 o'clock guy, or excuse me, the 8 o'clock guy is going to set up the 9 o'clock guy, and the 9 o'clock guy is going to set up the 10 o'clock guy, and you're going to have like this narrative arc between the 3 hours. And you see this on all three. You see it on MSNBC, you see it on Fox News. Tucker, Hannity, and Ingram are not the only ones who do this. Tucker sets everything up, Hannity really carries it through, and then Ingram puts the final bow on it. Same thing on MSNBC. If you switch over there, it starts off, I think Maddow is the 9 o'clock. I know that. And then, is it O'Donnell? No, I can't remember that guy's name. It's the little one. It's the squirty little one with glasses. And then I don't even know who I think the 10 o'clock guy is that older guy. And then of course you get to 11 o'clock and Brian Williams comes on. There's really no competition for Brian Williams at 11 o'clock at night. Because I think Don Lemon is the 10 o'clock on CNN. Anyway, I'm babbling. Short file. But, okay, so I want to talk about how Anderson set up his narrative for his hour tonight, because as I was watching it, my mouth was kind of on the floor, not for the story he was telling, but the way he was setting it up. And if you don't know this, I'm an associate professor of English over at Guilford Tech full-time, and then I adjunct at North Carolina A&T. And one of the things that I teach, because I teach the second level composition, which is basically the sophomore level comp, and we focus mainly on rhetoric because it's all about argument. It's all about setting your audience up and setting up how you're going to deliver that message to the audience, that kind of thing. So I'm watching this and I'm viewing it through this lens of rhetorical strategy, and my mouth was on the floor because I was like, oh my God, this is a textbook example of how to deploy a narrative that you're spinning to get your audience to buy into what you're selling. So here's what Anderson did, and again, this is not a rant about CNN, so don't take it as me like bashing the network, because honestly they all do this, and you watch Hannity or Maddow and you're going to see the exact same thing. They set things up, but the way Anderson did it tonight was just so obvious and so perfect, and it was just beautiful. So he starts off the hour talking about the president's message. And while he's talking about it, he's got a split screen. And he explains the split screen. He tells you it's so wonderfully obvious. He tells you right from the get-go, when he throws up this split screen, you've got the president on one side and protesters at Lafayette Park on the other. And he tells you right up front, I want you to watch what's going to happen, and then I'll break it down for you. And so then he says, watch what happens as the president is speaking, because and he sets this up for you pretty well. He used an adjective along the lines, and I'm coming off memory here, guys, so I don't have a transcript in front of me, and later I could probably do like a full-blown video of breaking this episode down once it posts to YouTube, if it ever does go up. I'll find a way to do it. But anyway, he uses an adjective like, it's so astounding or so astonishing, okay? So immediately, before you've even seen anything, you know something bad, right? You've got that negative image in your head. So he's already tainted it. Then he shows the clip, and you see, and they did so good. They picked specific clips from Trump's speech where he's talking about being a peaceful president and how he's reaching out to the protesters, and how he wants peaceful protesters to be able to protest in peace and all this stuff, right? And while he's doing that, on the right side of the screen, supposedly at the same time that he's saying this, you're seeing police pushing protesters back and tear gas being thrown at them. Now, is it ironic that happened? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was planned. Who knows, okay? Was it bad press for the president? Probably. Is the liberal media, like MSNBC, CNN, and those guys, are they going to go after it? Oh my God, they're going to eat it like a buffet, right? So you know this is going to happen. So he shows the clip, and then he comes back and he tells you the story, okay? Now here's the problem. When you're in journalism, and okay, the reason why I'm being big on this is because when we look at that block of nighttime players from 8 to 11, those 3 hours, all they do is op-ed, okay? It's all opinion. It's all biased views from either the network or the anchor or both, right? Sanctioned opinions by the network to the anchors. All three of them do it, okay? All three of them are just as guilty of doing it. But, it's really easy to see Fox News do it because they're so blatant about it. MSNBC is a little bit less blatant about it. But tonight when I was watching Anderson, I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. Look at what he's doing. So they show the clips. He comes out of the clip, and like I said, he tells you the story. He tells you what you just saw. And he structures what you just saw in a prism so that you're only focusing on what you saw. All right? And you're only focusing on how he wants you to interpret the images that you saw. So then he goes to another clip. And the other clip is, okay, why were they... He throws out the question. And again, he's leading you. He throws out the question and says, why were they pushing the protesters back? Okay? Because he mentions like twice, that I can remember at least 2 times while he's showing the split screen. He mentions that these protesters were not that far from Trump. They were in Lafayette Park, right behind where Trump was. He keeps pushing that. So he's sowing seeds. Then he cuts to the president walking up to, I think it's St. John's Episcopal Church, and the one that had caught on fire, that they had set fire to. And he holds up a Bible for pictures and all that, and then he goes off, stands over to to his left, where a couple of others join him for more pictures. And Cooper starts to drop a word, and the word is PhotoOp, and he says it over and over and over. He's doing this PhotoOp, he's doing this PhotoOp, so he's doing this PhotoOp. So he could have used anything else, but he chose PhotoOp, because PhotoOp, in the context that Cooper has set up to this point, is a negative term. So then we cut to Jim Acosta. And we've got Jim Acosta and Anderson Cooper. And Cooper asks Acosta the obvious question that you know is coming. Jim, you were there. What did you see? What was going on? But what's interesting is the leading question that Cooper uses is, we've just seen on tape the president arguing against violent protests, that he's for the peaceful protests, but then we see, again, he's narrating for Acosta, but then we see the police using force against these peaceful protesters. Also, he can get a photo op. Jim, what did you see? Now, he's already told Jim in code what he wants him to talk about. Focus on these points. I'm going to lead you. And so what does Acosta do? He basically repeats everything that Anderson said with different adjectives, different words, to kind of, give it some flavor. This is so good. It was so good watching this. So then, and of course, what is it? And you hear the word photo op between the two of them. You hear it like 4 or 5 times coming back and forth. Photo op, photo op, photo op. So they're hammering this word. So that, and this is not by accident. This is by design. This is why this was so cool to watch, because it's not Fox News, it's not MSNBC. This is CNN, right? Because if you make this argument, a lot of times if you make the argument, well, this is how Fox News does it, well, you're just against Fox News. You're just a liberal nut. Or you go after MSNBC and this is how Matt Al does it. And you're just against the liberals. You're just conservative nut job. Everybody knows CNN is crazy, so nobody really pins you for either one, right? Um, maybe they do. I don't know. So it was just great to see Anderson do it. It was so awesome. So after they get done with Acosta, Anderson has the typical lineup, right? We bring in a mayor, and she talks about some stuff that Trump had said rhetorically about the protests and that kind of thing. And of course, Anderson starts to pivot away from the photo op. He's not going to leave it. He's going to come back to it because he's got an ace in a hole guest coming up after this mayor, okay? So he started off with her. He's talking about what had happened earlier today during the phone call, and then of course Trump's threat to bring in the military tonight in his address. So they pivot to that, and they talk about that. And then eventually he kind of sprinkles on the photo op. Okay, how much did that damage the president's message? Again, a setup question for her so that she can come back and rag on Trump a little bit. Then we get to the coup de grace guest, which is the Episcopal bishop of the diocese that the church is in, which just happens to be a female, and about how upsetting it was to see Trump, and he sets her up with this. Again, all setups, because it's the way he words his questions. When you saw the president speaking about being good for or backing up peaceful protesters, and then at the same time peaceful protesters being removed from Lafayette Park so President Trump could have a photo op at your church, what went through your mind? So he sets her all up before she's even had a chance. And of course she goes after him, and she goes after Trump, and she talks about how this is not Jesus' teachings, that you don't do this. And she brings it back to that a few times. Now, Anderson kind of leads her a couple of times, but there's a couple of other times where she comes back to it on her own. But she keeps pushing this idea that Trump is not following Jesus' teachings, etc., that it was disgraceful to see him at the church after all this protesting and all this stuff. And we won't even go into everything that Jim Acosta said, because Acosta dropped like this hearsay bomb that I'm sure the Times and the Post tomorrow are going to be, dropping in their op-eds, sprinkling on their op-eds. So anyway, and probably at least one of their front page stories of why this quote unquote photo op took place. So then, to top everything off, you have, and this is going to sound so bad, but I swear to God, if you pay attention to these guys, they all do this. Cooper brought in the token black guy to interview at the end. And this time it was Magic Johnson. Because LA, here's the thing, while all this is going on, LA, it's 5:30 in the afternoon, 5:45 in the evening in LA. So they're just getting started out there, where we've already had a pretty eventful night, and now it's 9:30, so it's probably, it's 6:30 down there, right? Or out there. So they're really we're starting to see them really get going now. And they'll start pushing for, or you'll start to hear stories coming out of LA pretty soon. Because there's already stories. There was a story about Philadelphia before the 6 o'clock news. So we got started early tonight on the East Coast. So anyway, but he has Magic Johnson on there at the end to really put the icing on the cake of the narrative. And I'm not saying that Magic Johnson is a token black guy, but if you look at the formula that these people use, especially with this news story, they're going to have a black person either right at the top or right at the end. And if they can put them in the middle, if they can have all three guests be black, they've won the lottery. Chris Cuomo's big thing tonight was he was going to have the Minnesota Attorney General on his show tonight to talk about the prosecution of this case, because he's going to be the one prosecuting the case. The Attorney General of Minnesota is. So he was big on that. But when we look at, even Erin Burnett, like I said, at the very end of her show, she had Bernard Shaw on there. So it was just, you see how they work, how they operate. So, of course, that's what Cooper does. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how cable news channels sucker us into believing a story from their point of view. They're experts at it. And it was fascinating for me tonight to watch Anderson Cooper give a textbook lesson on how to spin a story. And it was beautiful. The story itself is very sad and depressing. There's a lot of sad and scary things happening right now. Tomorrow morning we're going to be a different country, and probably the day after that we're going to be different from tomorrow. Things are getting pretty crazy out there and shaky. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't been this scared since 9/11. It's scary out there, but I did find a ray of light. Not in the story, but in how the story was constructed. And it was a thing of beauty. And like I said, maybe one day I'll find a full recording of AC 360 for June 1st and just break it down and show you how he actually does this. Because like I said, I was doing everything off memory. I wanted to hurry up and get in here and do this and put this together. It's a last minute thing that I threw together. So I hope the lighting's all right. I didn't set up my lights. I've just got lamps going on in here, so I hope the lighting looks good. I don't know. I'll find out here in a minute when I edit it and throw it up on YouTube. So you'll probably see this about 10. It'll probably take me about the next 20 minutes to throw this up. But anyway, so make it a great day. Be safe. Go Dodgers. All right. Peace.